This morning we begin a four-part series we're calling Men at Work, where we'll examine the changing roles of men in the workforce. Some guys believe that a masculine image is linked to their job, but these days a little extra testosterone is showing up in some surprising occupations.
Housekeeping.
Is it macho? Some might say no, but in today's economy, Curtis Donclar says he's happy to have his job.
For me, it's no problem. The bottom line is you're doing a job, you're getting a pay, you're paying your bills.
Just don't call him a maid. His title is room attendant. From cleaners to librarians.
Let me see if we can have anything on that.
Well, look at me and tell me if you don't think I'm macho enough.
The times have changed.
Okay, now home care has all been arranged. We do live in a more open society today, that I think we have the opportunity and the abilities to be more diversified and more accepted in various things.
53-year-old Jim Warner has filled many roles during his employment career, from air traffic controller to shoe salesman. Now he's a registered nurse, and he's no Florence Nightingale.
Some people probably expect a nurse to be a woman, and when I come in, they have some degree of hesitance about it, but after I talk to them and I introduce myself, I lessen their fears. All right, here we go.
Okay. About 95% of registered nurses are women, but the number of men has doubled since 1980, and male applicants to nursing schools have also increased.
Okay.
I see more and more men entering the profession that are coming from different careers, and they decide they need stability for their families, for the future.
What are we building over here? A ladybug?
For some, it's not about the economy, but job satisfaction. David Smoke teaches pre-kindergarten, where according to labor statistics, women make up 98% of the ranks.
A lot of men look at this profession as almost like a babysitter, and or a nanny or something to that effect.
He's heard jokes that while some guys have blue-collar and white-collar jobs, he's chosen a pink-collar.
No. Men look at someone who's nurturing and loving and patient, 7, and allows a kid to sit on their lap when they're crying or when they're upset as feminine. You gotta run faster. That's where I really feel like I'm making a difference, is really in these children's lives and knowing or hoping that their future will be brighter because of some of the influences that I gave them at this early age.
And with over 8 million people unemployed today, there's an expectation that more guys will be flexing their own muscles in female-dominated careers.
I'll throw the ball with you, too.
Kevin Hassett is Director of Economic Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Brian Nelson is Director of Men Teach, an advocacy group dedicated to recruiting more men to teach young children. And we should mention he's also a registered nurse. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Matt.
Kevin, let me start with you. Are we seeing a mass exodus of men to these traditionally female roles, or is this more of a trickle?
Well, I think it's more like a mass exodus, because basically what's happened is that there's an underlying trend of men moving towards these female occupations anyway because they're good jobs. But also, female occupations tend to be more stable during downturns. And so we're in a recession right now, and very often it's the men that get laid off. They're out looking for jobs. They're looking for female jobs.
So you're talking about the fact that this is driven by the economy, but it also has to be driven by a more open society, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big differences in society these days is that people don't necessarily associate sex with job. In fact, I think if you look at Annika Sorenstam in the golf tournament a couple of weeks ago, men were pulling for her. A couple of decades ago, men were pulling against Billie Jean King.
And we have to remember that some of these men who are now moving into what were traditionally female roles watch their mom go to work and work in perhaps a male-dominated field, and have also maybe in other professions had a woman as a boss.
Yeah, that's right. And speaking of bosses, about a third of men have a wife that makes more money than they do.
Brian, what are the major obstacles when a man decides to take on a role that has traditionally been a female role in terms of occupation?
Well, from our research, we find that there's 3 main reasons. One is the stereotypes, that people think that men aren't nurturing, that somehow they can't take care of children. The second finding was that men are concerned about men are going to be abusing children or harming them. And the last one is certainly low pay, especially in early education, and also low status of the profession.
So what kind of soul searching does a man typically go through before he decides to take one of these female-dominated roles?
Well, I think what happens for me when I was thinking about the work, people question, why are you doing this? They say, or they say, when are you going to get a real job? I think so often the society thinks that if you're working with children, it's not considered real work, it's babysitting. But I have to say that I have found, despite these barriers, that it's incredible work. It's really has meaning, and that men can nurture children, and they actually do a good job, and that everybody, men and women, deserve to be paid well. And last, I think that really, when you think about it, children need a strong, caring, nurturing, loving man in their daily life.
Kevin, are we going to see women forced out of their jobs because men are pouring into their professions?
No, I think it's a win-win situation. The fact is that people are choosing the jobs that they think are best for them, and they're not, deciding, well, I can't do that because I'm a man or a woman.
And what about the pay that Brian just talked about? If we put a graphic up of some female-dominated professions and their equivalent salaries or their correlating salaries, are men coming into these professions going to bump up the salaries? Are they going to demand higher paychecks? And that might prompt some mixed emotions on the part of women.
That's one of the interesting things that we're going to just have to wait and see, because in the past people have said that traditionally female jobs have lower salaries because they have more flexible work hours and so on. And now that men are in there too, maybe we're going to find out that the wages go up because it was discrimination after all.
And clearly men are finding, if they thought these jobs were easy, they're a rude awakening, because a lot of the jobs they're taking on are not easy at all, even though they thought they were.
Yeah, that's right.
Kevin, Brian, guys, thank you very much. We appreciate it.